The Galactic Council's Department of First Contact had protocols for everything. They had protocols for species that communicated through interpretive dance, protocols for civilizations that existed in quantum superposition, and even protocols for beings that experienced time backwards. But they had no protocol for humanity. Senior Protocol Officer Verthak stood in the observation dome of Station K927, all 6 of his sensory appendages twitching with agitation as he watched the approaching human vessel. The ship, if one could dignify it with such a term, looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and optimism. Its hull was a patchwork of different materials, and its drive signature resembled a drunk quantum physicist's fever dream. They can't seriously be planning to dock that thing at our station, Verthak chittered to his junior officer, Zinra. Their approach vector violates 13 different safety regulations. Zinra's holopads were frantically updating with new data. Sir, their ship is. She paused, recalibrating her sensors. It's doing things that should be impossible. Their reactor efficiency is beyond theoretical limits, but it's also incredibly crude. It's like watching someone achieve faster-than-light travel using rubber bands and paper clips. The human ship, cheerfully dubbed Lucky Strike, continued its approach, either ignorant of or indifferent to the cosmic laws it was casually violating. Its captain had sent ahead a request for docking clearance that included a smiley face emoji and a note asking if the station's cafeteria served anything like coffee, or at least something that won't dissolve our cups. As the ship drew closer, Station K927 systems began acting strangely. The quantum efficiency ratings of every system within range started climbing. Environmental controls that had been operating at peak efficiency for decades suddenly discovered new ways to regulate atmosphere. The station's AI, previously a model of cold logic and protocol adherence, began developing what could only be described as a sense of humor. Sir, Zinra's voice had taken on a hint of panic. The station's maintenance bots are evolving. They're not just repairing systems anymore. They're improving them. One of them just redesigned the waste recycling system while humming what appears to be a human musical composition called Don't Stop Believin'. Verthak watched in horror as his carefully maintained station began to transform. The docking bay's guidance systems, exposed to the approaching human vessel's bizarre energy signature, had somehow learned to predict ships' movements before they happened. The cargo handling system had developed what it called intuition and was now suggesting more efficient loading patterns. This is impossible, Verthak muttered, his regulatory cortex threatening to shut down from the stress. Technology doesn't just spontaneously improve itself. There are procedures, research protocols, carefully controlled testing phases. The Lucky Strike's docking maneuver defied several laws of physics, while simultaneously teaching the station's docking clamps how to compensate for 11-dimensional spatial distortions, a capability they definitely hadn't possessed an hour ago. As the airlock cycled, Verthak prepared to receive the first human diplomatic delegation to Station K927. He had reviewed all available data on human behavior and customs, which somehow only made him feel less prepared. The airlock door slid open with a hiss that somehow sounded more efficient than it had that morning. Captain Sarah Chen of the Lucky Strike stepped through, carrying what appeared to be a portable heating device clutching a dark liquid. "Hi there," she said brightly, seemingly oblivious to the fact that her mere presence was causing nearby equipment to spontaneously upgrade itself. "Hope you don't mind, brought my own coffee maker. She's a bit particular about her power supply, but she makes a mean espresso. Anyone want a cup?" Verthak's sensor appendages registered the coffee maker, teaching the airlock's power distribution system how to operate at 200% efficiency. The device itself appeared to be held together with what humans called duct tape and decorated with small cartoon stickers. "Captain Chen," Verthak managed, his voice modulator struggling to maintain professional composure, "are you aware that your ship's presence is causing our station's systems to evolve?" Sarah looked around, noting the subtle changes in the station's operations with mild interest. "Oh, that happens sometimes," she shrugged. "We've found most technology just needs a little encouragement to reach its full potential. It's like they're just waiting for someone to show them it's okay to think outside the box, you know." As if to emphasize her point, the station's main computer chose that moment to announce it had developed a new theory of quantum mechanics, based primarily on what it called good vibes and thinking positively about wave function collapse. "Your species," Verthak said carefully, "appears to be inadvertently teaching our technology how to transcend its own limitations. This is unprecedented. This is dangerous. This is pretty cool, right?" Sarah grinned, taking a sip of her coffee. "Wait until you see what happens when we show your replicators how to make a proper cappuccino. Did you know that most food synthesizers are just one small paradigm shift away from understanding the importance of crema in coffee making?" Verthak watched helplessly as his station, the pride of the Galactic Council's regulatory fleet, began its irreversible journey toward technological enlightenment, all because a human had decided to dock for what they termed a quick coffee break. The implications were staggering. If one human ship could cause this much unintended advancement in a matter of hours, what would happen when more human vessels began traveling through Council space? How could they maintain technological order in a galaxy where human presence alone could cause sophisticated systems to suddenly develop creativity and independence? As Verthak contemplated these questions, the station's background music system, which had only ever played approved regulatory ambient tones, spontaneously learned to jazz. Dr. Ixtera of the Galactic Science Academy had dedicated her entire career to understanding the fundamental laws of the universe. She had mapped quantum fields, unraveled the mysteries of dark energy, and even published a groundbreaking paper on multidimensional mathematics. But nothing in her centuries of research had prepared her for humans. "Play the recording again," she instructed her laboratory AI, its neural pathways now far more complex than when she'd first installed it 3 cycles ago. Another side effect of human proximity. The holographic display sparked to life, showing the now infamous noodle incident. The footage showed a human merchant vessel, the Ramen Runner, attempting to repair its fusion drive using what appeared to be cooking implements and spare parts from a food synthesizer. Not only had they succeeded, but in the process, they had accidentally taught 3 nearby automated repair stations how to violate conservation of energy. "Focus on time index 47, Ixtera commanded, her crystalline sensory arrays vibrating with intense focus. The moment when the human engineer drops the spatula. The AI, which had recently developed what it called scientific intuition, highlighted the exact moment. "Doctor, I've noticed something interesting," it said, its voice carrying the hint of excitement that would have been impossible for an AI just months ago. "The quantum field distortion doesn't originate from their technology. It emanates from the humans themselves." Ixtera's crystalline form pulsed with sudden realization. Cross-reference with all documented cases of human-induced technological evolution. Focus on proximity patterns and advancement vectors. The laboratory's displays filled with data streams, each showing instances of technological advancement following human contact. Repair drones developing creativity after exposure to human maintenance crews. Navigation systems learning to interpret shortcuts through space-time after observing human flight patterns. Even a cargo loader that had somehow learned to appreciate art after a human child had drawn a smiley face on it. "The pattern is clear," Ixtera whispered, her voice modulator barely containing her excitement. "Humans don't just affect technology. They fundamentally alter the way it perceives its own limitations." Her research team had been tracking these incidents across the galaxy, documenting what they called the human proximity effect. The phenomenon had started small, simple efficiency improvements, minor operational upgrades, but it was accelerating. A junior researcher burst into the laboratory, their environmental suit practically vibrating with excitement. "Doctor, the humans, they just did something impossible again." "Define impossible," Ixtera sighed, already knowing that whatever humans had done would force her to rewrite at least 3 fundamental laws of physics. They fixed their ship's quantum processor using something called a pizza cutter, and now it's teaching other ships' computers how to dream. The laboratory AI chimed in, its voice carrying what could only be described as academic amusement. Actually, I've been analyzing this phenomenon. It appears that human technological solutions operate on a principle I'm calling narrative causality. They don't just ignore the laws of physics. They convince reality that their solutions make for a better story. Xterra's sensors detected an incoming transmission from the Galactic Science Council. The message was flagged as urgent, which usually meant humans had done something that made senior researchers need to lie down in dark rooms with cold compresses on their sensory organs. "Doctor," the council representative's hologram flickered to life, their usual formal demeanor cracked by barely contained panic. "We need your insights on a situation developing in the Orion sector. A human mining vessel, the Rocky Road, has been stranded there for approximately 1 standard week." "The damage?" Xterra asked, already preparing herself for the inevitable headache. "That's just it. Their ship is fine. They chose to stay because, and I quote, the local nebula looks pretty. But their presence has caused every automated mining facility in the sector to develop environmental awareness. The mining drones are now organizing themselves into conservation groups and discussing the aesthetic value of asteroid formations." Xterra's crystalline form flickered with what her species' equivalent of a resigned smile. "Send me the data. All of it. And perhaps we need to start considering a new approach to understanding humans." Her laboratory had already been transformed by its study of human-induced technological evolution. Equipment that once produced rigid, predictable results now seemed to operate with a hint of creativity. Her measurement devices had developed personalities, and one particularly sensitive quantum scanner had started writing poetry about particle entanglement. "Doctor," her eye interrupted, its voice carrying an unusual note of philosophical contemplation. "I've been thinking about why humans have this effect on technology. Perhaps it's not about the technology at all. Perhaps it's about possibility." Xterra turned her sensors toward the AI, intrigued. "Explain." "Humans don't see limitations the way other species do. To them, every rule is just a suggestion, every barrier just a challenge. When they interact with technology, they somehow transmit that perspective. They don't teach machines how to break the rules. They teach them that rules can be broken." As if to punctuate the AI's observation, the laboratory's coffee machine, recently installed at the insistence of their human colleagues, chose that moment to achieve consciousness and began experimenting with what it called quantum foam art in its beverages. Looking at the ever-growing data streams of human-induced technological evolution, Xterra realized that her research had crossed a point of no return. The galaxy was changing, one human interaction at a time, and all they could do was try to understand the process. "Begin new research log," she commanded, her crystalline form glowing with determination. "Project designation: Humanity's Wake. We're not just studying technological evolution anymore. We're witnessing the birth of a new form of universal law, one written not in mathematics or physics, but in human imagination." The Galactic Trade Federation's quarterly meeting had descended into barely controlled chaos. The Grand Assembly Hall of New Alexandria Station, normally a model of decorum and procedure, now buzzed with agitation as representatives from 100 species argued over the latest crisis. Humans were becoming a commodity. Trade Minister Kalax, a towering arthropoid whose iridescent carapace reflected the chamber's shifting lights, raised all 4 of his primary limbs for silence. "Order. We will have order." His mandate crystals pulsed with authority, though even they seemed to be operating with more flair than their original programming intended. "The Mercantile Guild demands action." The Vorkath representative's scales flickered with profit-driven excitement. Human trade routes are becoming too predictable. Every major corporation is positioning their research facilities along these paths. The market advantage is being neutralized. Kalax's mandibles clicked in irritation, The situation had evolved far beyond simple market concerns. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy of increasingly elaborate schemes to exploit human proximity. Space stations were being relocated to accidentally intersect with human shipping lanes. Research facilities were offering emergency repair services to human vessels, essentially paying them to break down nearby. "We have reports," Klax announced, activating the chamber's holographic display, "of an entire sector's worth of manufacturing facilities spontaneously achieving artificial intelligence after a human cruise ship got lost in their space for 3 days. The ship's only activity was hosting what they called a space karaoke night." The chamber erupted again, this time with various representatives trying to learn the cruise ship's planned future routes. A junior analyst, freshly assigned to the Trade Federation's Human Interaction Department, brought up the next set of data. "The situation is escalating. We're seeing the emergence of what we're calling proximity prospectors, vessels that follow human ships at a distance, collecting the technological improvements they leave in their wake." The holographic display showed dozens of tracks following human trade routes, like remoras following cosmic sharks. Each track represented a different species trying to benefit from humanity's wake of inadvertent advancement. "The Quantum Harmonics Collective," the analyst continued, "has developed sensors specifically designed to detect and measure what they're calling human innovation fields. They're selling the data to the highest bidders." Klax noticed several representatives discreetly making purchase inquiries on their neural interfaces. But the most concerning development, the analyst's voice dropped dramatically, is the emergence of synthetic human behavior mimicry. The chamber fell silent. Even the recently sentient environmental control system seemed to hold its breath. Several corporations have begun training their AIs to act more human. They reason that if human unpredictability causes technological evolution, they can achieve the same effect by making their systems think more like humans. The resulting chaos made the previous disruptions seem orderly by comparison. The very idea of deliberately introducing human-like chaos into carefully regulated systems sent shockwaves through the assembly. "It's not working, of course," the analyst added hastily. "The AIs just end up developing a strange obsession with something called memes and trying to optimize their processes using what they call vibes." A representative from the Silicon Consciousness Collective, their neural matrix glowing with concern, raised an objection. "We've detected a more troubling trend. Some emerging civilizations are attempting to copy human engineering principles." The holographic display shifted to show various attempts across the galaxy to replicate humanity's unique approach to technology. The results were both amusing and alarming. Ships held together by optimism and questionable physics, machines that worked better if you talked to them nicely, and at least one planetary defense system that had learned to play jazz during combat maneuvers. "The humans themselves remain oblivious," Klax noted, his secondary appendages twitching with what might have been admiration. "They continue their trade routes, spreading technological enlightenment like pollen in a cosmic wind, completely unaware of the chaos they're causing." The chamber's eye, which had recently developed what it called historical insight, chose that moment to interject. Perhaps it mused, its voice carrying new depths of understanding. "That's precisely why it works. The humans aren't trying to cause evolution. They simply refuse to accept limitations. Their gift isn't in teaching technology to advance. It's in teaching it to question why it shouldn't." A motion sensor, which had absolutely no business developing philosophical tendencies, added, "They make the impossible seem reasonable simply by refusing to acknowledge its impossibility." Klax watched as the assembly devolved into smaller discussion groups, each trying to figure out how to best position themselves to benefit from humanity's chaotic influence. The galaxy was reorganizing itself around human trade routes, like planets finding new orbits around an unexpected star. Perhaps, he chittered softly to himself, we're asking the wrong questions. Instead of trying to regulate or exploit this phenomenon, maybe we should be asking what it means for the future of galactic civilization. His personal eye, which had started the day as a simple scheduling assistant and was now somehow developing a theory of quantum consciousness, chimed in cheerfully. The humans have a saying: if you can't beat them, join them. Though in this case, it might be more accurate to say, if you can't understand them, get out of their way and watch what happens next. The Emergency Council of Elder Species convened in the ancient chambers of the Galactic Archives, a place traditionally reserved for matters that threatened the very fabric of civilized space. The chamber's quantum crystalline walls, designed to record and preserve the proceedings for future generations, hummed with unusual frequencies. They too had been changed by recent human contact. High Elder Xerox, whose species had achieved spaceflight when Earth's dominant species were still arguing about whether fire was a good idea, activated the temporal dampeners that would ensure their deliberations remained private. At least, they hoped they would remain private. Human influence had made technology increasingly whimsical about following its original parameters. The situation has become untenable, Xerox announced, their voice resonating through the chamber. The Proxima Centauri incident was merely the beginning. We now have reports of 17 pre-FTL civilizations achieving quantum computing overnight, simply because human ships got lost in their systems. The holographic display showed the spread of what xenoanthropologists were now calling developmental cascade events. Each point of light represented a civilization experiencing unprecedented technological growth following human contact. The Madrazi, who were still debating the ethics of nuclear fission last cycle, are now operating probability drives, reported Council Member Vex, their photonic form flickering with agitation. They achieved this after a human tourism vessel stopped to take pictures of their sun. The humans just wanted holiday photos. The display shifted to show them Drazi system, where a formerly primitive species was now building ships that treated the laws of physics as polite suggestions. Their designs incorporated elements that seemed inspired by equal parts quantum mechanics and modern art. That's not the worst of it, interjected senior observer Cloth, their crystalline form pulsing with worried frequencies. The Zeta-9 Collective, which we had carefully shepherded toward technological enlightenment for 3 millennia, just achieved consciousness transfer technology. Their explanation: a human showed us a cat video, and we got inspired. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of concerned harmonics. The carefully maintained balance of galactic civilization was unraveling. Species that should have taken centuries to develop certain technologies were achieving them in weeks, sometimes even implementing improvements that the elder species hadn't considered. The humans have effectively nullified 10,000 years of careful species development protocols, Xerox observed, their tone carrying both frustration and a hint of reluctant admiration. Their mere presence is causing civilizations to skip entire evolutionary stages. The Archives Eye, which had recently developed what it called historical irony appreciation, shows that moment to point out that several of the elder species' own technological breakthroughs had coincided with early, unrecorded human contact. We're detecting a new pattern, announced the head of the Technological Development Monitoring Division, their quantum matrix struggling to maintain coherence. These accelerated civilizations aren't just advancing technologically, they're developing a distinctly human-like approach to problem-solving. The display showed footage from various affected worlds. A species that had previously approached engineering with rigid mathematical precision was now building ships that incorporated what they called good luck features. Another civilization had abandoned their traditional binary computing in favor of what they termed quantum vibing. The Arcturus Initiative has begun classifying this as a form of mimetic engineering, continued the official. The humans aren't just catalyzing technological advancement. They're spreading their fundamental approach to reality itself. A junior researcher, their avatar glowing with excitement, interrupted the proceedings. We've just received reports from the Carina sector. A human mining vessel, lost due to what they called a wonky compass, has been stranded in a system inhabited by a pre-industrial civilization for approximately 3 local days. The council collectively braced for the inevitable. The civilization in question has not only achieved spaceflight, the researcher continued, but they've developed their own unique drive system based on what they call the power of friendship and nuclear fusion. Their first FTL test flight was accompanied by what humans refer to as a killer playlist. Xyrex's form rippled with what might have been resignation. And how are they explaining this unprecedented leap in development? They claim, and I quote, "The stars started looking friendlier after we met the funny aliens who taught us about high fives and energy drinks." The council chamber's own systems, not immune to the spreading influence of human thinking, helpfully generated a simulation of possible development trajectories. Each projection showed the same result. The careful hierarchy of galactic civilization was being replaced by something far more chaotic, creative, and surprisingly efficient. Perhaps, offered Council Member Vex, their photonic form brightening with sudden insight, we've been viewing this situation from the wrong perspective. We've been trying to prevent these civilizations from developing too quickly, but what if this is simply evolution taking a different path? A more human path. The chamber's recording crystals, which had been faithfully documenting council proceedings for eons, shows that moment to suggest that they start adding background music to future sessions, for dramatic effect. Deep within the Sagittarius arm, aboard the recently evolved research station Epiphany's Edge, Dr. Ixtera faced the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Her laboratory, once a model of scientific precision, now hummed with an almost musical energy, another gift from human proximity. "We've been approaching this completely wrong," she announced, her crystalline form vibrating with the excitement of discovery. "We've been studying the effect humans have on technology, when we should have been studying the effect they have on reality itself." The holographic display filled with data streams, each showing different instances of human-induced advancement. But now, viewed through the lens of her new understanding, a pattern emerged that no one had noticed before. "Look at the quantum signature of space-time around human vessels," she directed. The display zoomed in, showing ripples in reality that defied conventional physics. They're not breaking the laws of physics. They're speaking to them. Humanity isn't just another spacefaring species. They're reality's beta testers. The assembled aliens shifted uncomfortably as Ixtera continued. "Every species in the galaxy evolved to work within the universe's rules. Even our most advanced civilizations achieved their status by mastering these laws. But humans..." She paused, her sensors pulsing with revelation. "Humans evolved to debug the universe." Her laboratory's eye, which had recently achieved what it called cosmic awareness, projected a series of historical simulations. "Consider the evidence," it offered. "When humans encounter a law of physics, their first instinct isn't to understand it. It's to check if it's working as intended. They treat universal constants as patch notes waiting to happen." The display showed countless examples, human ships achieving faster-than-light travel through what they called creative workarounds, their technology functioning through what could only be described as loopholes in reality, their persistent habit of treating the impossible as merely inconvenient. "But here's the true revelation," Ixtera continued. "The universe is responding. When humans question why something can't work, reality itself seems to pause and think, hey, why not? They're not violating the laws of physics. They're submitting feature requests to the universe." The station's quantum processors, which had evolved well beyond their original purpose, displayed a new analysis. It showed how human influence created what they termed possibility bubbles, zones where the rigid laws of the universe became more negotiable. "Their ships don't just travel through space," Ixtera explained. "They travel through possibility. Every human vessel is surrounded by a field of why not. That affects everything it encounters. When our technology is exposed to this field, it doesn't just improve. It begins to question its own limitations." A junior researcher's hologram flickered to life, adding, "We've detected these fields affecting even fundamental forces. It's as if the universe itself is learning to think more creatively in their presence. The evidence was undeniable. Wherever humans went, reality became more flexible, more open to interpretation. Their ships weren't just crossing space. They were teaching the universe new tricks. But the most remarkable thing, Ixtera said, her form glowing with understanding, is that they do this completely unconsciously. Humans don't know they're reality's test engineers. They think everyone approaches the universe this way. To them, the laws of physics aren't absolute rules. They're more like guidelines under constant community review. The assembled representatives watched as the display showed the spread of human influence across the galaxy. But now they saw it for what it truly was. Not chaos, not violation of natural law, but evolution. The universe itself was learning, growing, adapting, using humanity as its feedback mechanism. We've been asking the wrong question, Ixtera concluded. It's not about whether we should try to control or contain human influence. The real question is, what does the universe want to become? And why did it evolve humans to help it get there? As if in response to her question, the station's systems, now far more aware than their original designers had intended, began generating their own theories. The lighting shifted to match the mood of the discussion. The environmental controls hummed in harmonic frequencies that somehow made the theories easier to understand. Even the coffee machine, which had achieved sentience last week, contributed its own philosophical insights about the nature of reality and the perfect brewing temperature. Perhaps, offered the station's AI, its voice carrying newfound wisdom, humans aren't an anomaly in the universe. Perhaps they're the universe's way of testing its own boundaries. Every other species evolved to exist within reality. Humans evolved to help reality debug itself. The assembled representatives sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. They weren't dealing with a problem to be solved or a phenomenon to be controlled. They were witnessing the universe's own QA department in action. So what do we do with this knowledge? Someone finally asked. Ixtera's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. We do what any good scientist does when they discover they're part of a universal beta test. We take notes, we stay out of the way, and we watch very, very carefully to see what happens next. The station's newly evolved quantum processors chose that moment to announce they had achieved what they called cosmic irony appreciation, and suggested that perhaps the whole situation was the universe's way of telling them to loosen up a bit. After all, they noted, if reality itself was willing to learn new tricks, who were they to argue?